Hey everyone, Michael Crump here with a quick PlayStation Homebrew news update. I wanted to provide a quick check-in regarding the PlayStation 5 13.60 being patched, and we also have a new demonstration involving CSSFontFace on a PlayStation 4 running firmware 11.02. Let's clear up exactly what we know, what we do not know, and what this means if you have a lower PlayStation 5 firmware. First, Gezine's zero-day kernel exploit was not patched in PS5 firmware 13.60. The confusion came from an earlier message where Gezine said that a report he was writing had been patched in firmware 13.60. Some people took that statement and assumed he was talking about his zero-day kernel exploit. Gezine later responded directly to that, and he asked whether he had ever said the zero-day kernel exploit was fixed. That clarification tells us the earlier message referred to another report, not the zero-day exploit people were discussing. So this is the key correction. Firmware 13.60 did not patch Gezine's zero-day kernel exploit based on his direct clarification. However, there is still an unknown part of the story. We do not know what the separate report covered. It may have involved another kernel issue, or it may have involved a userland vulnerability. Until Gezine or another researcher or developer provides more information, we should not label that report as either one. Now, we also saw that EchoStretch shared an image showing KStuff Lite version 1.09 running on a retail PlayStation 5 with firmware 13.60. So it is very cool that we do know that there is at least a version of KStuff that is running on the very latest firmware. Now, what all that exploit is, we don't really know yet because these are just some bits that the developers have behind the scenes. So the corrected takeaway is good news, but again, it's not a reason to update your console. The second part of this update concerns CSSFontFace and the PlayStation 4. So back in June of this year, Nathan Fargo in UFM 42 published a technical write-up called From CSSFontFace to ARW, a PlayStation WebKit exploit write-up. Now, ARW means arbitrary read and write. So in simple terms, this type of capability gives a researcher controlled access to memory inside the affected process, and this can be an important building block, but it does not automatically equal a console jailbreak. This work is about a WebKit userland entry point, and that WebKit is the browser engine that's used by the PlayStation browser environment. So a browser vulnerability here can provide you the first steps into the system, but again, researchers generally need additional vulnerabilities and support work to move beyond the initial userland access. Dr.Yenyen had previously reported that this WebKit userland work functioning through the PlayStation 4 firmware 11.02. There was also a correction to the reported cutoff. The cutoff is firmware 11.50 and not 11.52. Now, there's a new demo shared through Dr.Yenyen's Blue Sky account of what it looks like in action. The video starts by showing the PlayStation 4 system information screen. The console is running system software 11.02. It then moves into the browser and loads the CSSFontFace use after free exploit page. On that screen, we see the exploit output progress through multiple stages. This is useful because it shows the work operating on a real PlayStation 4 hardware instead of appearing only as source code or a written claim. So that is meaningful progress, but it is important to keep the result in perspective. This video is just a technical demonstration. It's not a new one-click public jailbreak, and it doesn't mean that every user on firmware 11.02 can immediately install Homebrew using this method. What it does show us is that the CSSFontFace work is active on this firmware and that researchers are continuing to validate the pieces needed for a larger chain. Okay, so here is the bottom line on the PlayStation 5. Gezine's zero-day kernel exploit was not patched in firmware 13.60. The earlier message was about a different report, and we do not know whether that separate report involved a kernel or userland issue. And then on the PlayStation 4, the CSSFontFace WebKit work has been demonstrated on real hardware using firmware's 11.02. So that is encouraging research progress, but again, it is not a finished public jailbreak. So for both stories, the safest advice remains the same. Stay on the lowest firmware possible if wanting to run Homebrew matters to you. Now I want to hear from you. Does the 13.60 clarification change your plans, or are you just going to stay on the lowest firmware possible? And if this episode helped you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with somebody else following the PlayStation scene. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Michael, out.